I'm going to discuss Noam Chomsky's Zionist allies and develop some insight into the organizational techniques that are used by the sandbaggers, an alliance of alternative media who are coming across as defenders of Gaza, when in quite reality, they brought about the destruction of Gaza quite purposefully as insiders to a plan. See, my story was one of serial humiliation. One of the humiliating factors is that the Palestinians never stuck up for me, even though Zionists were the criminals responsible for what happened to me. The fact that Gail Burston was never arrested is enough to tell you a great deal about the movement of the supernova rave into place on October 5th for the war on sin they classified as sin war, gay, ill, and sin war. My first word in the Jewish Holocaust survivor community is, Noam Chomsky specializes in linguistics. I was raised in a Jewish Holocaust survivor community, and I reached for my father's glasses and said gases. Something about that suggested the zone of proximal development was being impinged on that led me to say that, because of the double entendre between gases and the ability to see what is being written to you. Our garage in 1966 had spray painted on it, "I love Sarah Sarin," and something like a sarin nerve agent was used on me. So the humiliation of Gaza is a good point of departure for evaluating Noam Chomsky's Zionist friends. It goes back to Ramparts magazine, where David Horowitz was. David Horowitz became an arch conservative, meaning that the MK Ultra scene that was psychedelically embellished at Berkeley and the socialist movement there was being stage managed. One of the people who discussed these issues with David Horowitz to advance Gail Burston was Oriana Fallaci, who also, in her book about Muslims, used the symbolic image of an orange head with John. You see, they staged a phony Intercept and called their magazine Intercept. And this shows you some of their organizational tactics, because the Intercept was, if anything, the invisible man. It was the adoption of the Gail Burston script. She was never arrested. Meanwhile, they summoned the Society for Human Ecology to impinge on me to get, for one thing, abortions that they could make public, and it worked like a charm. The Society for Human Ecology put together a two virgins pussy bowl operation, which created a quid pro quo, a black man threatening to execute a white man if he didn't get the Japanese girl after setting me up with a woman from India. It's all revealed in Richard Starkey lore, such as the Telltale clip, which is an Alias Little Boy, Japanese film, that shows the pussy ball operation. It shows two girls trotting up to the edge of the pool. One of them is carrying a ball, symbolizing one of them is a virgin and one of them isn't. So when you look at the Governor's School for the Arts, we have a man in defense ministry in Israel called Israel Katz. Well, the proximate cause of the humiliation of me was a girl named Leslie Katz. So she was a Zionist, and she worked with King Crimson and John Schulman and Noam Chomsky on setting up the alibi for the machos in the Latin American smoke and steam situation, who play from the socialist left as sandbaggers in defense of Gaza, when really they're all in favor of the storyline. The storyline is one that was iterated by Stephen Langer, who said, "I'm not sorry for anything I did, only that it had to be you, Jimmy," meaning I was a symbolic person. And although Patricia Fripp sneered at me that I was an irresponsible journalist, while she was doing that, she was quoting Donald Gruber that the reason I was deaf was because I was a pussy ball who had stuffed clay in my prick, and that there was soon to be another ice age, and that Leslie's virginity proved me a rapist. And this is what the steadfast sandbaggers regarded as responsible journalism. Well, Leslie was represented at the governor's school by a girl, a woman named Deb Burnham. Now, Burnham, like Burnham and Bailey, was someone who denied. There was a girl named Dina Michaels who, like Gail Burston, believed in very heavily in the zero-sum game logic of like public housing. Lyndon Johnson gave us public housing in return for participation in the Vietnam War. It was sort of veteran exchange. So the zero-sum game of housing, which not everybody in the world believes in. China is trying to do away with homelessness, but and their population is larger, yes. She believes in it very fervently. And her sidekick, a really glowing, malicious person named Eric Horn, had collaborated with me on a poem, and we came up with "Clinging to Stones in Whitewater." It was part his and part mine, and it became the title of the poetry magazine for the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts in 1978. But Burnham made a point of denying. I had organized the collaboration to write a poem and said "Clinging to Stones in Whitewater" was half his and half mine. She didn't want to put my name on it. She didn't want to credit me. See, so this traces back to the idea of Greg Carl's. The initial encounter of the X-motive is tainted by the shadow of the adversary, that there was an invisible ulterior from secret sex. So you don't get credit. You're an anonymous ghost. And this is the invisible man of John Lennon the Machine being integrated into Israel Katz's war operation in 1978 from Bucknell University in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. So the zero-sum game is part of the operation of building an ark. And one of the things I found in, it went on to Peter Gabriel worked with Burnham and did the same thing on a song called That Voice Again. And when I realized from Will Zell on Mount Desert Island, who was a white Nazi who had the blessings of the Black Panthers and the NAACP, and was parading himself as leader of the Jewish Defense League because of his so-called defense with Patricia Fripp of Leslie Katz. They said Hollywood was building an ark concept that's a new confederacy, and I made this. Better shut your face about no ark, because that ain't infinite. And I was writing the word colors syndicate as KOLORZ. And then when I came to Tacoma Community College, lo and behold, in a book about religion in the Soviet Union, because it was clear that a fundamentalist tripartite was at work in the Sin War. Dina Michaels used to say when people lost everything, they turned to God. And so the way to make them beholden to a God law totalitarianism is to rob them of everything. Get it? So I found in this card Walter Colors, spelled the same way. And in 1974, it was checked out by D.D., Delia Dugan, which is a very interesting name for someone to have around here in this veteran hot society of Tacoma in 1974. And Mark Wagner, which is the name of the Green Berets of Russia. So when Russia talks about how they were our allies in World War II, it's important to remember that they were allies also for a while in a non-aggression pact of the Invisible Agency. So the arc is being put together in an idea of a greater good. You see, why would Sean Lennon advocate for the people who killed his father if they really killed him? Well, he sees himself as Luigi, I guess. Gail Burstyn is part of the Luigi team, Luigi of Gaza. It's important to remember when these sandbaggers talk about me, they kept me in the dark. I was deaf and couldn't go to school. I was a dishwasher who never lived above the poverty line. And they go crazy at the idea that I won't forswear making money off of my work or being paid for my terrible injuries. They poisoned me in the mouth. They've given me Parkinson's. I have neurological disorders. You know, I have gum, made me lose my teeth. I mean, they've done horrible things to me in the city of Seattle deliberately. Part of this traces back to the University of Pittsburgh, who, if you look at Vasad Prijay, he has 40 books, and of course he claims he keeps them short so people can read. If I did that, they'd be ripping people to death at the penny line. It's not to make money. No, it's not to make more money. Keep them short so you can sell more books. Well, in Pittsburgh, they had somebody who knew all about it. I don't know how the police overlooked it. He must have been working with the police, who had all the insider story of Leslie Katz, and he brought in Martin Sheen to defend Reagan. The Texas school book is about the murder of JFK. So Reagan and Louis Lapham and Noam Chomsky all hated JFK. So they teamed up in the name of Leslie Katz. I mean, scornful ideas about Ryland Crary, who was a school bus driver in his retirement. There's a strange thing to be peddling in Gaza. The murder of a school bus driver is seen as heroic in Seattle, where they poisoned his son in the mouth. The suspects in the poison have repeatedly been Vietnamese, and he was opposed to the Vietnam War. So the Society for Human Ecology that put up two virgins also had him in a semi-detached house, address 1717 Murdoch Street. 17 is the symbol of two virgins. And when they brought in the trophy queen to clear the air about the AIDS attack by giving herself to the Obama machine, they put out a film with the help of the Fox agent who was living in my house, a stepbrother, called Anna and the Queen, where the intended Chinese girl ends up with the king because the person she's intended to is just a poor dishwasher in China, a Buddhist kid. So, meanwhile, you're supposed to get off on the burning of LA because it's sort of, people say it's turned getting even news, and it's Luigi, it's karma for Gaza. This is Eno's theory because Gabriel was weaponizing fears and detonating things like the USS Iowa, setting off Van de Graaff generators to they used to have this thing called the electric eel show at the zoo. You know, they touch the electric eel and sparks would go up. People go, woo! So this is Don Toon's macabre Swami Nostra electric eel show from The Invisible Man. So this is the sort of thing that they really did. They had me subliminally writing things like Hidden Walrus long before I knew what was going on. Stone was working, Oliver Stone was working with Cyril Wecht. His gang, Martin Andelman, Thomas Gordon, and Leslie Katz, all parked outside of Cyril Wecht's house repeatedly together. They were all close friends. They were all Zionists. A place called East West Circuit Road. So it's very peculiar that the people who are defending this fundamentalist God law system are actually in this arc killing anything that's convenient, getting rid of stragglers in the margins of Lenin's sex, drugs, and rock and roll generation. And now Gaza, it's just an convenient to kill situation. These sandbaggers have about them the self-regard of Pitt's power system. Pitt power is behind a lot of this. And so is some people from the Broadway musical Hair. Amanda Harcourt contacted me in 1984, the so-called Intercept, and said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So you see the arc of colors. The arc is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts meant that the military-industrial complex were counting on Penis Gabriel and Robert Fripp to tell their sob story about Jimmy the Walrus with the help of Vince Irini, and he brought in Martin Sheen for Reagan. The socialist left of Seattle, Washington provided indispensable services to Ronald Reagan that they're still declaring. It was Reagan's team that got Beacon Center taken down and put us where they can, they were already doing tricks of biology in my food at the homeless shelter. So when you look at like people who are around Oliver Stone and Cyril Weck's team, you have Fred Rogers, who worked across the street from where Miles Kirshner lived. He had me in D.C. for Reagan when Reagan came. He was shot. Reagan waves to me. It's the invisible man, the mission impossible. Nobody escapes God. You see, you can't escape the narrative of the idea that they're celebrating with the help of fascist Hollywood. So really irresponsible journalism on the part of Noam Chomsky towards me was a stalling maneuver. They have these stock phrases, you're not special, white fragility. In other words, the weak and helpless are to be brushed aside. White fragility means the macho Latinos don't stand for the white queerbaits. And of course, the arguments that they make are based on zero-sum housing arguments. So the sandbaggers are continually plying the arc system that was spelled out by Gail Burston. And failure to arrest Gail Burston over various weird tricks of language that UW Dialectical came up with. Sherman Alexie made a pun of the woman from India. She's like an Indian. And they had Pope Carl's white fascist military at CMU calling my attempts to get help from the two virgins post-Ebola outrage that was clock days, Custer's last stand. You get it? That's a sort of mindset that's at work with Alexis Trist and UW Dialectical. And Indians are so used to being used as symbols that when hardcore right-wing extremists, they let Donald Trump walk and Gail Burston walk and didn't challenge them at all. Now they're riding on high, and that's a lot of that is Noam Chomsky and Sherman Alexie's doing. They rendered an indispensable service to Don Toon. So I find it rather strange that so much venom and scorn gets directed at a school bus driver and a deaf kid who was trying to demonstrate through reason at the University of Pittsburgh in the 80s that zero-sum housing was not a law of the universe, that there should be enough to go around for the greater good if it was applied properly, if people thought clearly and didn't engage in fascist, genocidal premeditations. But I had a divestment article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it doesn't show up in the archive search. Wonders of Wonders, because the NAACP at Pitt said I was interfering with their plans for the white demonstrate the white fragile in the Invisible Man project. And so I looked up Beatty because they misspelled the name of the man, Mr. Beatty to Mount Beatty, in premeditation of Mount Desert Island. And I found a woman from Indian Society for Human Ecology, initial TV, which is two virgins in the television set. You know, they have this psychopathic sin war going on with the perniciousness of pornography to make people feel guilty and blame themselves that they're being genocided. I mean, Israel Katz's phenomenons worked like a charm.